Throughout military history, great commanders have emerged, their brilliance for strategy, for overcoming armies of greater number. This is the history of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was born on the island of Corsica, not long after its annexion by France, to a native family descending from minor Italian nobility. His parents, Carlo and Maria di Bonaparte, maintained an ancestral home called Casa Bonaparte in Chicago. Napoleon was born there on the 15th of August 1769. He was the family's fourth child and third son. The dominant influence of Napoleon's childhood was his mother, whose firm discipline restrained a rambunctious child. Later in life, Napoleon said, "The future destiny of the child is always the work of the mother." At the age of 9, Napoleon moved to the French mainland and enrolled at a religious school in Autun in January 1779. In May, he transferred with a scholarship to a military academy at Braine-le-Château. In his youth, Napoleon was an outspoken Corsican nationalist and supported the state's independence from France. Like many Corsicans, Napoleon spoke and read Corsican and Italian, and didn't begin learning French until he was around the age of 10. Although he became fluent in French, he spoke with a distinctive Corsican accent and never learnt to spell in French. Consequently, Napoleon was routinely bullied by his peers for his accent, birthplace, short stature, mannerisms and inability to speak French quickly. He became reserved and melancholy, applying himself to reading. An examiner observed that Napoleon has always been distinguished for his application in mathematics and claimed that he would make an excellent sailor. Napoleon's first signs of his leadership abilities came when he led junior students to victory against senior students in a snowball fight. On completion of his studies in Brienne in 1784, Napoleon was admitted into the military college in Paris. He trained to become an artillery officer and, when his father's death reduced his income, was forced to complete the 2-year course in just 1 year. Upon graduating in September 1785, Napoleon was commissioned as a second lieutenant in Le Fer artillery regiment. He served in Valence and Hunan until after the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789. He supported the French Revolution while serving in the French army and tried to spread its ideals to his native Corsica. He rose rapidly in the army after he saved the governing French Directory by firing on royalist insurgents. The defeat of the royalist insurrection extinguished the threat to the Convention and earned Napoleon sudden fame, wealth and the patronage of the new government, the Directory. As a reward, Napoleon was promoted to commander of the interior and given command of the army of Italy. Fame brought him to the attention of many women, and within weeks he was romantically involved with Josephine de Beauharnais. The couple married on the 9th of March 1796 in a civil ceremony. 2 days after the marriage, Napoleon left Paris to take command of the army of Italy. He began a military campaign against the Austrians and their Italian allies, scoring decisive victories at Castiglione, Bassano, Arcole and Rivoli. The decisive French triumph at Rivoli in January 1797 led to the collapse of the Austrian position in Italy. These victories made Napoleon a national hero. During the campaign, Napoleon became increasingly influential in French politics. His army's actions in Italy were condemned by the royalist politicians, who warned that he might become a dictator. Napoleon then sent General Pierre Auvergne to Paris to lead a coup and purge the royalists on the 4th September 1797. This left his Republican allies in control, but made sure that they were dependent upon him. Napoleon returned to Paris in December 1797 as a hero. He met Talleyrand, France's new foreign minister, and they began to prepare to invade Britain. After 2 months of planning, Napoleon decided that France's naval strength was not yet sufficient to confront the British Royal Navy, so instead he decided on a military expedition to seize Egypt and thereby undermine Britain's access to its trade interests in India. Napoleon assured the French government that, as soon as he had conquered Egypt, he would establish relations with the Indian princes and, together with them, attack the English in their possessions. With this assurance, the government agreed to secure a trade route to the Indian subcontinent. The expedition to Egypt included a group of 167 scientists, with mathematicians, naturalists, chemists and geodesists among them. Their discoveries included the Rosetta Stone. Napoleon and his expedition eluded pursuit by the Royal Navy and landed at Alexandria on the 1st of July. He fought the Battle of Shub-Branit against the Mamluks, Egypt's ruling military elite. This helped the French practice their defence tactics for the Battle of the Pyramids on the 21st of July, about 15 miles away from the pyramids. On the 1st of August 1798, the British fleet under Horatio Nelson captured or destroyed all but 2 vessels of the French fleet at the Battle of the Nile, preventing Napoleon from strengthening the French position in the Mediterranean. His army had succeeded in a temporary increase of French power in Egypt, though it faced repeated uprisings. In early 1799, Napoleon moved an army into the Ottoman province of Damascus, where he led 13,000 French soldiers in a conquest of the coastal towns of Arish, Gaza, Jaffa and Haifa. The attack on Jaffa was particularly brutal. Napoleon discovered that many of the defenders were former prisoners of war, allegedly on parole, so he ordered the garrison and some 2,000 prisoners to be executed by bayonet or drowning. Men, women and children were robbed and murdered for 3 days. While in Egypt, Bonaparte stayed informed on European affairs. He learned that the French had suffered a series of defeats in the War of the Second Coalition. On the 24th of August 1799, fearing that the Republic's future was in doubt, he took advantage of the temporary departure of the British ships from French coastal ports and set sail for France, despite the fact that he had received no orders from Paris. Unknown to Napoleon at the time was that the Directory government had sent him orders to return to ward off a possible invasion on French soil. But poor lines of communication prevented the delivery of these messages. By the time that Napoleon reached Paris in October, France's situation had been improved by a series of victories. The Republic, however, was bankrupt, and the ineffective Directory government was unpopular with the French population. The government, seeing Napoleon's popularity with the people, discussed Napoleon's desertion, but was too weak to punish him. Seeing the political danger, Napoleon then engineered a coup in November 1799 and became the first consul of the Republic. During this period, Napoleon, as the first consul, established himself as the head of a more authoritarian, autocratic and centralised republican government in France, while not going as far as to declare himself sole ruler. By the end of this period, Napoleon had engineered authoritarian personal rule, which has been viewed as a military dictatorship. During the Consulate, Napoleon faced several royalist assassination plots, and to extend his power, he used the plots to justify the creation of an imperial system based upon the Roman model, with himself as emperor. Napoleon's coronation took place at Notre Dame de Paris on the 2nd of December 1804. The ceremony lasted around 3 hours and was officiated by Pope Pius VII. 2 separate crowns were brought for the ceremony, a golden laurel wreath recalling the Roman Empire and a replica of Charlemagne's crown. Napoleon entered the ceremony wearing the laurel wreath and kept it on his head throughout the proceedings, since the laurel wreath symbolised victory, peace and civic virtue. For the official coronation, he raised the replica Charlemagne crown over his head in a symbolic gesture, but never placed it on top because he was already wearing the golden wreath. After the crown was placed on his head, Everyone in Notre Dame Cathedral stood up spontaneously, the men waving their feathered hats. Josephine, his wife, knelt in front of Napoleon, where he then placed the crown on Josephine's head. In the years that followed, Napoleon faced multiple coalitions against him. He shattered these coalitions with victories at the Ulm campaign and the battles of Austerlitz, which led to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. In 1806, the Fourth Coalition took up arms against Napoleon. He defeated the Prussians at the battles of Jena and Ostend, marching the Grand Armée into Eastern Europe, and defeated the Russians in June 1807 at Friedland, forcing the defeated nations of the Fourth Coalition to accept the treaties of Tilsit. 2 years later, the Austrians challenged the French again, during the War of the Fifth Coalition, but Napoleon solidified his grip over Europe after triumphing at the Battle of Wagram. Hoping to extend his power and his embargo against Britain, Napoleon invaded the Iberian Peninsula and declared his brother Joseph the King of Spain in 1808. The Spanish and the Portuguese revolted in the Peninsular War, aided by a British army, resulting in defeat from Napoleon's marshals. In 1810, Napoleon married his second wife, the Austrian Duchess Marie-Louise. A year after, she gave birth to their son, Napoleon II. In the summer of 1812, Napoleon launched an invasion into Russia. The resulting campaign witnessed the catastrophic retreat of Napoleon's Grand Armée. In 1813, Prussia and Austria joined Russian forces in a sixth coalition against France, resulting in a large coalition army defeating Napoleon at the Battle of Leipzig. The coalition invaded France and captured Paris, forcing Napoleon to abdicate in April 1814. He was then exiled to the island of Elba. But Napoleon would not remain in exile for long. In February 1815, he escaped and took back control of France without fighting a single battle. The Allies responded swiftly by forming the Seventh Coalition, which finally defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo in June 1815. The British exiled him to the remote island of St. Helena in the Atlantic, where he died in 1821 at the age of just 51. In 1840, Louis Philippe I obtained permission from the British government to return Napoleon's remains to France. His casket was opened to confirm that it still contained the former emperor. Despite being dead for nearly 2 decades, Napoleon had been very well preserved and had not decomposed at all. On the 15th of December 1840, a state funeral was held, and Napoleon passed into the pages of history as one of the greatest commanders